Socialism has never worked. I see comments like this constantly under videos like mine. And honestly, it ranks right up there with flat earth and chemtrail logic. Not because it's edgy, but because it's historically wrong. Policies rooted in socialist thinking are literally what created the first sustained majority middle class in recorded history. Most of the things people love about modern life didn't come from unregulated markets. They came from collective investment. Let's zoom out. For most of human history, people lived in subsistence communities. You made what you needed to survive, and sharing wasn't a political ideology. It was common sense. You didn't forget how to share after kindergarten, but you stopped sharing when surplus showed up. Once we learned how to produce more than we personally needed, power entered the room. Small groups claimed divine or inherited rights over land, water, food, and labor. Everyone else worked to survive under them. That system had a name, feudalism. And for thousands of years, the overwhelming majority of humans lived in poverty because of it. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Productivity exploded. Amazing, right? Except ownership didn't change. We just swapped crowns for factory deeds. Same hierarchy, different outfit. And here's the part people forget. Thinkers have warned us about this forever. Plato argued that rulers shouldn't accumulate private wealth because it creates unavoidable conflicts of interest. Across cultures and centuries, the warning is consistent. Systems that concentrate power attract people who will abuse it. By the early 1800s, that warning became impossible to ignore. Industrial cities were overcrowded. Child labor was common. Wages couldn't sustain life. Factory conditions were brutal. This period is sometimes called the Age of Misery, and for good reason. That's when thinkers like Pierre Leroux began using the word socialism to describe an alternative. Cooperation rooted in shared humanity. Not state control of everything, but democratic control over systems that determine whether people live or starve. Other reformers used the term capitalism critically at that time to describe an economic system built around hoarding and domination rather than collective well-being. The core idea was simple. If machines and systems can produce society's basic needs, food, housing, medicine, infrastructure, then control over those systems shouldn't recreate feudalism in modern form. Of course, history took some dark turns. Authoritarian regimes stole the language of socialism while violently destroying actual labor movements. And we all know how that turned out. But after 2 world wars and economic collapse, something changed. In the United States, pressure from labor movements and progressives finally landed on a president's desk. Social Security, the New Deal, massive public investment, millions of government jobs building roads, parks, schools, power grids, and creating art. Homeownership became possible for ordinary families for the first time. And how was it funded? Taxes. Extremely high taxes on the wealthiest Americans. Top marginal rates near 90%. The result wasn't collapse. It was the fastest expansion of the middle class in history, growth that lasted decades. In Canada, we saw parallel outcomes. Public health care, labor protections, crown corporations, public education, and infrastructure that allowed people to actually build stable lives. None of that came from trickle-down economics. That era didn't end either because it failed. It ended because policy shifted. Taxes on the wealthy were slashed, unions weakened, and corporate power reconsolidated. Today, the countries with the strongest social safety nets consistently rank highest in health, happiness, and stability. That's not ideology, that's data. The underlying principle is simple. The land, water, air, and the foundational ideas humanity has built together, things like electricity, medicine, computing, the internet, are collective inheritances. When they generate wealth, that wealth should circulate. When we allow a tiny group of people with extreme power-seeking traits to monopolize everything, we don't get innovation. We get hoarding. We get corruption. And eventually, we get collapse. So no, don't fall for the billionaire class propaganda. Call it socialism if you want, or don't. Call it being social. Call it living in a society. Peace out. And if you're not already following me, you should. It's going to be a ride.